Yes, so like the film episode I'm watching right now with like the whole bank robbery happening and basically with the whole police chase, cop chase and everything. Like I'm looking like the scenario that I'm considering right now is for like the whole cop chase. Usually getting with like those five people who executed like the bank robbery, like eventually driving all the way into like eventually reaching like the town of something. And still they would be like chased by like the police. Even that point, like the scenario that I'm considering, and at that point I'm considering like. Uh, as usual, like I'm looking like will like my play to kind of thing like will would have totally like be getting back will be on its way back home after like playing this whole game with like my little kind of thing. It's definitely at like my just business. It's definitely another thing. So like they will be like done playing that game and basically like the scenario that I'm looking for is for like that day like I'm looking like Jonathan might have not changed like my system like for will back to basically bring Will back to Japan. That's the scenario that I'm looking because like I'm looking like uh, a lot of days might have gone by with like Jonathan like and Will back like star like bringing Will back from like my system up will game with like Mike and all of them and it might have went on for like a lot of days without any trouble or issues happening. And that way, like eventually, I'm concerned like Johnson as well as like maybe like Johnson's mother, like fears over like Will's safety might have eaten up that temperature, like eventually eaten up that temperature, eventually Will might have like by himself like might have like as in like the very beginning like once again things might have started to like turn into like a normal scenario where like Phil after like as a like usual game was like Mike doesn't understand at like Mike's basement like after the this game will be over like when might it might have been like in the process it might be that Will all by himself like it was like bicycle like returning back home so it's like the scenario that I'm looking. So that might swing would be like like by it would be like return back things that I'm looking like during that time like they would be just very for the instance, but this time I'm just looking like the scenario to be like just like so it's exact van that van of like a robot like basically being chased by like the cop car like basically totally running into Will and Will go beyond those bicycle at that point. So like at that point I'm looking like Will being totally scared and like Will just like writing towards like the van full of robbers is like the scenario that I'm thinking. But like at that point, I'm looking when Will shockingly realizing that he has like superpowers. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like it's a like kind of like 11 like I'm looking at Will right now would be having kind of like superpower. Like telekinesis powers is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like Will raising his arm and basically straight away like the van full of robbers like getting that sideline just like the scenario like getting like thrown away and getting sidelined it's like the scenario that I'm looking and like the cops would be like the only thing that basically maybe like the van might have something might have happened with like the person steering like the van might have maybe like deflected the van to like not run into will like might have been along the lines like the cops might have assumed so like the cops straight away arresting those van full of robots to like the scenario but like all those robots would have been seen like what had actually happened that like will like raising his arm and basically like the van just basically with that way using like some sort of like mysterious powers being able to like move a speedy van that's was like heading towards will like really this thing like I'm responding like at that time I'm super to do at that point like that will as well will be shocking you realizing that you have huge power and like it those are robots as well would be totally shockingly like noticing like precisely noticing that basically will have just kid like will have like some sort of like mysterious powers, especially my best friend. So like I'm just the potential reason and this is like a scenario, eventual scenario that I'm looking up into happen. So like I'm just like and my doctor prediction so that is sitting on to the thing that like it will be precisely we having like being probably having such super powers of telekinesis and the reason would be like due to like the monster like definitely will be like growing and living within then it's like the scenario that I'm because will would be like slowly right now would have turned into like a carrier for like the monster should grow and that might have been like the case for like all the previous abduction of like the monsters as well as like all the parallel version of like the humans living in like the real world that had died like in like the parallel world. Them all might have like the majority of them might have been like abducted by these monsters and might have turned into like a carrier for like the newer monsters to like grow out of and basically composable like as these new monsters will be growing out of them like composable like during that process like they would like composable like that whole thing that like was in that rich mouth and will was like captured by like the monster and trapped in by the opera as well as those had found will in like the was that thing in that the mouth of will might have been left by that monster. So you know the sense that thing would be like working on its own and it like that thing would be doing would be like it would be like covering like then that will affect the body of will to throw the like a phone like thing like the scenario that I'm looking at that the phone might be what like copper might have can be found like outside like Catherine virus. It's definitely it might also be impression that when copper and do it was like searching for will in like the battle wording Castle like right next to Castle like that exact thing that copper had seen might have been actually like the cocoon that like basically like these monsters would be like eventually like covering like through the process will be covering like the human carrier with while like the new born monsters will be like growing out of that cocoon eventually with like the human dying in like that process. It's like the scenario and once captured and once that thing is like placed onto like covered with like it's like covering like the human space like at that point like the human will be in like a trap like state exactly like how Bill was in like a trap like state without being like moved while Hopper as well as Joyce had found Will like in like the battle world like I'm looking like similar would be like the case might with like the majority of like the uh people who might have died in like the battle world certainly might have members. So like I'm looking like right now like the situation with Will would be like certainly since like Will had basically recently like vomited out like even after that whole month after like Joyce as well as like Hopper had saved Will like even after like a whole month like Will had basically commented out like still like the parts of like the monsters like but the next really because of like this like possibly this like monster like growing within will definitely with it. So like as like the monster grows more and more within will like and within will would be also like slowly gaining more and more power which like the monster will be having. It's also definitely when so like maybe like the monster as well might have like telekinesis powers like the power to like move objects definitely when so like that way with like the monster growing more and more within will like will might be gaining more and more powers and like it would be like since I got given the 10% something like this like speeding van that's like basically right now being chased by like stuck off like and there's something like totally like running towards like when like the scenario that I was doing and at that point like wind rising sounds and basically due to like the monster's power within will like the van getting like smooth and basically the speeding van getting moved and getting sidelined reflect the scenario that I was doing and then I was doing like those robots like getting captured by like the police and getting arrested and basically being sent to like the grown up ones under the pen being sent to and also like scenario where like the grown up ones after getting among like the robots like the grown up ones like being sent to like certain white like the left older ones under the pen like hopefully maybe like being sent to like juvenile detention yet like under the pen like them still even breaking out of the eventually it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And once they will be breaking out, like I'm just something like them all once again, like all these robots once again joining up and teaming up once again. And they, at that point, like their targets, like possible, like the moment they might have seen like will having like superpowers itself, like their target might have only fallen on will like the scenario that I'm doing. And was something like them totally seeing will as like a weapon that they could like totally will like superpowers to like move objects like they could like totally use it to like execute like bank robberies and basically like for them to be able to like escape without getting caught would be along the lines these robbers would be like totally at that point would be thinking so like with that intent like on the point like them like them with them with their target like eventually ending up will be eventually ending up seeing their target and them trying to like abduct will eventually is that the scenario that I was about and my Korean version. Like sort of the impression that I'm sitting on this like in the case of like 11 I'm definitely something like in the case of 11 like that 11 was like basically extremely exhausted, and when like 11 had basically used 11 left with the power to like take out that one monster, like at that point I was like still remember the prediction that like in that attack like 11 might have straight away taken the life of that monster, but like in that process, that intensity of like that attack of 11, like I was like another like portals might have opened to like that parallel world, and basically like since like 11 might have was like being exhausted, and when that during that attack like the intensity or like the side effect of that attack might have was like a portal to the parallel world to like quickly open up and quickly close. So like that portal might have quickly opened up and swallowed 11 and transported 11 to like the parallel world, and that portal might have quickly closed. So like by the time like my group and Dustin, all of them like so like so like we're looking for 11 after like 11th attack, like I'm going to even by then within that fraction of a second like the portal might have opened and closed, and like that might be how like 11 might have totally disappeared at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm looking for, like 11 right now would be trapped in like the parallel world, and I'm looking like 11 would be like extremely exhausted, and I'm looking like 11 would be struggling to like survive in like the parallel world. And so right now that even right now I'm looking like in like the parallel world, even though there are the great number of monsters in like the battle, but still emphasizing none of those monsters might have luckily for 11, like none of those monsters might have even right now might have not found 11, like the scenario that I'm looking, and 11 might have dragged herself and like got might be might have hidden somewhere within like the battle world. Stephanie might be hiding somewhere in like the battle world, but like 11 will be like extremely exhausted. It's like the scenario that I'm so like for 11 to be able to like use her telekinesis or like telepathic power to be able to like make contact to like, from like the battle world to like the real world with either might or like even like 11 wants to like basically access like the telephone at microphone or like even micro radio phone. Even for that like 11 would need like energy, like energy and stamina, which like the bandit of the 11 won't be having with at all stuff in 11 with. So like even for 11 to like even use 11's power to like create like a portal from like parallel world to the real world as well. Like like it might take like a huge amount of energy for 11 to be able to like do that. So like 11 will be right now badly exposed to that 11 right now won't be able to like do that at all. Won't be having like the energy herself to like be able to like do that at all. So like Ambassador right now 11 would be in like a hiding in like the battle world, and will be currently in that such a trap like situation where like 11 would be afraid to like gain back 11's energy to eat something, and basically to gain back 11's energy and recover, so that like 11 will be able to like get back and make it back to like the real world. Might be like the current situation with like 11 and definitely remember the generation. And definitely my personal impressions are like for 11 to be able to like create like a battle world and like even make it back to like the real world, and basically like and for elements to like while during 11th attack on that monster like the I can remember the revolution like a portal opening up quickly and like swallowing 11 and basically 11 ending up in like the parallel world and the portal closing quickly, like even that being possible for 11 while like energy of like the extent of like even beyond what like humanly possible would be required would be what's required to like open like the portal from like the real world to like the parallel world, since like their professor teacher like class had basically said along such lines like I'm remembering still for 11 to like be able to like most likely 11 like opening up the portal and probably right now would be like battle so like for 11 to be able to like open up a portal still would be due to that whole folding effect due to like the portal in like Brenner's energy laboratory. So like back in like Brenner's energy laboratory like basically even 11 it might have not been like driven by herself, like opening up like the foreign. There might have been already like a great source of energy, the necessary conditions within like Brenner's energy laboratory with all the machines and creating like the necessary quantity of energy for 11 to be able to like amplify it so that like basically the portal can be opened, and that might have been what might have happened and how like the portal might have been created within like Brenner's energy laboratory to like the parable the pyramid. So and so think remember the mention that like Brenner would be like Brenner's energy laboratory like energy would be like consistently supplied to like maintain that portal in like Brenner's energy laboratory in like that open state. It's definitely one with the reimbursement. So like I'm it will be due to like that folding effect that might have created even back then when like 11 might have opened like the portal to like the battle. for the first time in like runners energy laboratory. That folding might have been created even back then, and that folding would be still present. And even while everyone had basically attacked that monster from Hawkins' school as well, like basically, like even there as well, a certain extent of that folding would be definitely present. So like that would be the preparation for like during that attack, like as like a side effect, like basically the portal possibly having opened up and basically swallowing 11 and taking 11 to like the bad world possibly happening might have happened, and like this would be the reason for like if such a thing can happen, like for it happening. So sort of the kind of thing. So like right now about the time like since like everyone won't be like in like either will be in like a trap like situation like the battle world, and since like a container is represented to like 11 not for having any energy at all to the energy stand at all to be able to like once again open up like the portal to basically move to basically get back into like the real world from like the battlefield. So like especially because of this situation would be possibly what like 11 would be able to, so like in 11's mind right now, 11's like plan would be to like 11 would be like even struggling to even move. So like 11's plan would be to like somehow make it to like the location of like runners and the laboratory in like the battlefield, so that like that way like 11 might be hoping that the gates would still be open in an open like state in like runners and the laboratory, so that like through the runners and the laboratory the 11 will be able to like make it back to like the real world. So like this would be what like maybe 11 would be planning right now, definitely one of the because like I'm looking like it would be having to like keep a lot for 11 to be able to like regain back 11 stamina to be able to like open a new portal by 11 certainly never so like seeing like the way the battle world is like definitely 11 won't be like even at all expecting for 11 to find such that much of like a source of food there. It's definitely my to be enriched. So like this is definitely my to be enriched right now. Okay, so like the feeling of the Korean direction right now is that like since like one of like the robots by the name Carrie have like telekinesis powers like number two definitely it would be the result of like basically runner experiment in like the different parts of definitely going to bring it. So like I'm going to since like runner called Jane, this dot Jane 11 like and the like Cali might have been 10. It's definitely going to bring it. So like Cali might have been like the 10 experiment subject of like run up is definitely my personal reimbursement. So like I'm looking like run up my talk that basically that the like experiment like during like the whole and then first of all my preparation said that Cali would certainly be an outcome. Definitely remember so like run up my doubt totally abducted Cali might have totally abducted Cali in that distant past and basically at that point, like Brother might have performed all the experiments on carry and everything. That experiments might have not yielded any results at that point, successful results at that point for Pranav might have been what might have happened, certainly when the premise. So like at that point, so like then like on the point like what might have happened would be like after like so like Pranav might have totally thought that basically his like his experiment even though at that point was with like Cali was like a failure, like so Pranav might have totally said that basically Cali definitely like another failure or in that for another experience like Cali or like it might have been 10 that that one for another might have called Cali might have been 10 and like 10 is like a failure might have been along the lines that runner might have concluded like and back then it's definitely betrayal. So like then like runner might have totally released Cali back to like the back to like the city or somewhere. Certainly, what might have happened. Certainly, my reimbursement. So, like I'm looking like even though the experiment of Cali by Sprung might have been a failure back then, but like literally of like time passed, like I'm looking like due to that experiment of that Sprung on Cali, like I'm looking eventually like even though it might have been only a time delay because like I'm looking like as the years passed, like and Cali grew, like eventually Cali's body might have been able to like handle like that power of like that experiment, telekinesis, all of that Bran might have definitely done like telekinesis experiment exactly like in 11th case, like Bran might have done telekinesis experiment on Carrie, might have been what might have happened in next part. So like I'm like you can play as like Carrie as years pass, like I'm like Carrie might have been Carrie's body might have been able to like handle like the telekinesis power, and that might have been how like eventually Carrie might have ended up gaining like telekinesis for eventually definitely was there. But like in the case of 11, like I was like even though 11 was like 11 is in fact like during like 11's experiment, I think like basically 11 was like even younger than Carrie right now. And just like 11 could like actually use like telekinesis even back then, but then that may be due to like possibly that definitely Pranav might be definitely having like a exceptionally high IQ as well as like career as well might have had like might have been like that female worker in like Mech Alpha with like the highest IQ might have been career. So like I was looking like uh when like Pranav might have had a child with like career like and that child being like 11 like I was like 11 might have had like the an exceptionally high IQ that even passes up as both careers as well as for an technical result. And that might have been what allowed like 11 maybe to be able to like handle like the telekinesis powers, telekinesis and telepathic powers at like such a young age. But remember, yet like I'm like um, 11's body might have still like, but still like I'm like 11's like the rest of 11's body might have not been able to like handle like still that extreme intensity of like the telekinesis as well as the still passive powers. And this might be the reason for like 11 like basically having like 10 of wave whenever 11 uses like 11 like paper powers is also definitely my consideration as to like what might have happened in like the past. It's definitely my consideration. So like my interruptions like in like the recent past when like Pranav might have affected Cali, like I'm different like that and like Cali might have been like not only an orphan but also like might have been also homeless as well. So secondly might have been so like this leads into a question about the reimbursement and those into the bring that like experiments on Cali might have been a failure back in like the recent past, but like it might have been after like Bernard might have concluded that like the experiment was like a failure and might have released Cali that might have been after like a few years passing that Cali might have gained like telekinesis powers like and like the same situation might have been as well in like the case of the Ria as well. So certainly my so like when Bernard might have conducted lecture telepathy and like telekinesis experiment on like careers as well. Like even that as well might have ended up in like a failure in the case of careers as well. Who definitely remember the invention and it might have been like up so that at that point like Pranav might have like like release and release like careers from Michael might have been what might have happened. So like I'm like might have been after like the race might have been released from Michael Trump and like when like the race returned back home and I was open like it might have been after that like even though the race wasn't like the shock of like basically losing 11 like skills uh, of losing James Super and like still I was like even though the race wasn't like that shock and was in her home still living with her sister like still my considerations are like after like a few years might have passed like I'm looking like even careers as well. Exactly like in Cali's case, like careers as well, like due to like run of experiments like effect eventually happening in like careers as well. And that way like eventually as a maybe after a few years passing like careers might have like also gained like the ability or like power for like future fight is definitely my experiment and this might be the potential reason for like even while like George as well as like Hopper had basically paid visit to like the Reyes' home to the Reyes like at that point like the fact that the Reyes was even watching a TV show about like what gift to like basically give like gift your gift to your child during like in like during college and all that. Like basically, the fact that the race was watching such an exact show would be like definitely due to like the race possibly knowing when exactly 11 would be getting saved and like when exactly 11 will be able to like be able to like return back to like the race home. Like basically, all those like the race might have totally been through her future like definitely that day happening like but in the race might have probably been able to see using her future flight powers. It's definitely my consideration. So definitely careers will be like counting each day and like preparing for that day. One to like 11 will be like returning back to like careers is definitely my personal impression. So like basically according to my personal impression, particularly maybe of also like the scenario where like 11 in like the future also like gaining eventually gaining like future fight power as well eventually in like the century there's also like a possibility that I'm sorry, I'm not remembering. But like in the case of the Eleven maybe like Eleven's body won't be able to like maybe like Eleven having like a limitation where like Eleven's body still won't be like old enough or like strong enough to be able to like handle like future fight of like long range or so like and maybe like 11 gains future fight powers but like would only be able to like shoot up to only like maybe like a single day ahead or something like this. It is such along such like maybe like a the fight of like 11 maybe gaining. It's also like a eventually gaining such powers. It's also like a possibility that I'm looking for an impression. The product thing for impression right now is that like even though Cali has in fact like telekinesis powers, like super powers, like and the still assist with the method of impression for like an eventual definite scenario where like these robots will be only running into will and basically like the moment they will be running into will like them also witnessing like will using it like superpowers with like definitely eventual scenario that I'm looking and at that point these robots totally think that basically along with carries they also affect this will as well like basically who also has superpowers like at that point with like two members in like that robbery team like having superpowers that basically their future robbery will be able to like the poverty of it like success rate like then thinking that like they will be able to increase like the success rate if they also like abduct will as well as like force will to be part of like their team and that way like they can also definitely targeting will it's like an eventual scenario that I'm definitely and still thinking on to another thing. Okay, so like definitely know the induction right now with like my list induction right now like in this like arcade place like right now my different person second for like the robots like and the different like the robots will be like not the fight from like the cops like and like the robots like coming all the way into like the town of Hawkins into like this place and I was like them hiding their van somewhere and then deciding to like totally like hide for the time being to like hide by spending time in like the arcade maybe like I'm looking like them doing that and basically like that way like I'm looking if the arcade place like I'm looking like so almost like creating like nuisance and trouble it's like a scenario that I'm doing and that eventually resulting in like most like great option or like one of them like totally like asking questions or like that eventually resulting in like a fight between both of us and Mike Little options that's the scenario that I'm looking that and I was like at that point like I'm like one of the robots like injuring maybe like Mike and like like at that point and I was like most likely for Cali maybe using her power during that whole fight and basically like Cali maybe like using her power on like Mike, Lucas Anderson and all of them and trying to like use danger like using like Cali's power. But like at that point I was like will be when like I was like Will would be like totally standing in front and Will would be trying to like would be totally raising his arms trying to like shield Mike, Lucas Anderson and all of them. Even and at that point, I'm also like doing all of a sudden like basically like standing in front of like Mike Lewis and Dustin to basically protect them, even though like they won't be have any idea at all. Like they will be for like with, possibly having like the superpower, gain superpower by then like yet like I'm like the only thing to happen will be like will like totally raising his arms and while like standing in front of like Mike Lewis and Dustin. It's like scenario while like Candy would be like launching her like superpower like telekinesis attack. So like I'm looking at that point like will raising his arm without realizing he has powers and basically at that point like them all getting the ultimate shock with like Bill as well. Like by the raising his arms like telekinesis superpowers like coming out of like Bill's arms as well. It's like the scenario that way like Bill's power like blocking like Bill's telekinesis like blocking like Callie's telekinesis that is like the scenario that I'm looking at. And that being like the ultimate shock for like Bill might look at as well as for the robbers as well. So like from that point on, like the robbers like target straight away falling on Bill. And the robbers straight away deciding that basically like to eventually stealthily try to like them planning on like eventually stealthily trying to like contact Will and basically force him to like join their team of like robots like preventive scenario that I'm looking at the bring and members of interest. Okay, so like the game of very interesting right now as for like the arcade game that's like basically right now Dustin is playing while like Mike Lucas and like Will are watching like basically that arcade game, the Dragon's Lair. Like that game itself will be like totally full of foreshadowing. It's definitely my favorite version. The game name itself being like Dragon's Lair. Definitely because of that, like I'm person of the bringing season two of Stranger Things. Like I'm definitely Mike Lucas and Dustin would be definitely entering like once again, and they would be like totally entering like the parallel world and basically they would be like basically attacking and destroying like one of like the monster lair. It's like nest within like there would be like multiple nests and I was like in like the battle board and I was bring like Mike with understand that. before like season 2 would be ending, like I'm looking like Mike Lucas and Dustin like entering like the battlefield and succeeding in like destroying at least one layer of like that monster in like the battlefield. It's like the scenario that I'm looking, and in doing so, like while they will be doing and but like Mike the magical sword as well. And but definitely Mike totally finding something in like the parable, some sort of like an item or something in like the parable. And and I was doing like definitely like that thing would be definitely like a foreshadowing of 11 is definitely my movie. So like I'm doing definitely eventually in like season 2 I'm definitely something like Mike later than definitely eventually finding out about like 11 being alive is definitely my movie. So but like trapped in like parallel world. Like I'm expecting like micro in that sense, like eventually figuring out like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm expecting like not like eventually that maybe I'm expecting like 11 maybe that though 11 would be like in a trap like state and bad like so that like 11 still being able to like make a communication maybe to like micro like a radio phone in like the real world, like maybe at some point like 11 making that communication and might straight away 11 would be only barely won't be barely even able to like speak, but like with what little of like Eleven's voice that Mike would be hearing, like Mike only recognizing that it's like Eleven's voice and that Eleven is like alive somewhere in like the battle world will be along the lines like I'm considering Mike would be finally figuring it out, and that eventually resulting in like the foreshadowing of Princess Dalpin, the foreshadowing of like the feeling of Princess Dalpin in like that arcade game, like being like the saving of 11 by Mike Lucas and the scenes like the scenario that I'm looking where like Mike would be that prince of that person who's like trying to like pick up like the magic sword. And I was like so like Mike in like the battle world during that airport attempt to like rescue 11 from like the Dragon's Lair, and at that point I'm just remembering like 11 would be in like a trap like situation in like the monster lair in its like nest, like 11 would be trapped in its nest and captured and put there by like the monster. Like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I was looking like my Lucas and Dustin eventually entering into like the battle world just to like save 11, and I was looking like them totally like eventually I'm looking them struggling against like the monster with your their attention like save 11 like them totally struggling against the monster within its like layer. So 11 will be trapped in, and that would be when like ambassador like from there somewhere like ambassador might finding some sort of like weapon which would be like some sort of like an object or a weapon which would be like the ultimate weakness of this of these monsters certainly on the pyramid. So like Mike eventually would be like finding that out and maybe accidentally or like maybe then figuring out and basically searching for that weapon and maybe eventually finding it in like in like the monster's lair, or like ambassador like might accidentally like picking something up from like the monster's lair and basically like that ending up accidentally and coincidentally that ending up being like being revealed as like the ultimate weakness of like these monsters, and using that remember like Mike totally like attacking like the monsters like the scenario and Mike that way like saving with like that way like Mike Lucas and like totally working together while like Mike would be like attacking like the monster and like Lucas and Justin and Bill like and all of the others would be like at that point would be able to like save 11 due to like the scenario that I'm delivering and them all successfully successfully let them all like basically escaping from like the dragon's lair and maybe like even destroying like the dragon's lair and the uh, escaping from like the monster's lair in like the battleboard and them even like taking out that one single monster during that whole attack and like then successfully saving like 11 from like the parallel world and bringing 11 back into like the real world. It's also like an individual conflict second scenario that I'm considering the program of the framework. And yet like that monster that Mike and Lucas and all of them would have taken out, like that Mike definitely would have taken out, and that layer of that monster, which like even if there would be destroying, that would be only a single layer among like a great number of multiple layers of like monsters of like the monster which would be present within like the battle world, which like in the scenario that I'm just not different and different. So like definitely right now like this arcade game that like Justin is playing would be like full of that foreshadowing and that events too, which would be like eventually happening. But like about the only difference would be like even though Dustin right now while playing like Dragon Slayer game, like even though Dustin has failed and basically Dustin's like player had basically gotten taken out and died by the hands of like the monster and while trying to save Princess Dalpin like still like the when the in the scenario happens like Mike Lucas and Dustin would be like entering like the monster layer to like save 11 like at that point definitely I'm hoping none of them to end up dying and then successfully taking out that monster and saving 11 and returning back to like the real world. Like they're succeeding in that mission. Fully like without any without any death consequence like prevention scenario. That I'm also going to bring another also, the limit of three impressions that like basically since like right now this like arcade game since like Dustin that's like playing this arcade game and right now since like Dustin player can basically die by the hands of the monster and especially something in like individual future scenario in like season 2 where like while they would be like raiding like the monsters they are in like the battle world like phase 11 like at that point I'm deliver like eventually a situation happening where like Dustin would be confronted by like the monster and would be attacked by the monster and Dustin about to die by the hands of like the monster while like the others won't be able to like help at that point but like and Dustin at that point would be totally maybe like thinking that or maybe even thinking of this game like remembering this game like exactly like the game that he is like about to die by this monster but like at that very last second I was thinking like maybe for like maybe 11 it being like either 11 or like it's being like Mike using like that I'm leaning on the probability for it not being 11 but it would be most likely I'm like it would be Mike using some sort of like weapon that like would be like or like an object which would be like the monster's weakness like Mike actually finding out that out and that it's like the monster's weakness and using that Mike like saving like Dustin as like Dustin will be about to die by the hands of like the monster might saving Dustin as well. It's like also like an individual possible scenario that I'm assuming and using that like the monster might totally even possibly like taking the life of like the monster itself. It's also like an individual possible scenario that I'm assuming I'm dimension. Again, so like the Cleveland of 3 right now as for like this Mad Max name that basically has surpassed like Dustin in one of the arcade game. Like I'm assuming like Mad Max would only be a nickname and I'm assuming like Mad Max will be most likely the nickname of Scally. If you remember, it might have been Scally that might have like even surpassed Dustin in that one single one of the arcade game. It's like my favorite, and I'm basically like putting just in this one game alone. Like I'm basically like the other game as well. Like since like Dustin right now has revealed to that has basically like that's right now telling this as for like Dustin being the topper of like two other arcade games. Like I'm basically like those two arcade games in which like Dustin is like the top. Like Mad Max would have like surpassed Dustin in those two, not just this one arcade game alone, but like the other arcade game as well, where like Dustin is like the top. Like I'm assuming like Mad Max would have surpassed Dustin in that as well. It's definitely my personal game. And Dustin would be like extremely frustrated with like the name Mad Max. And Mad Max would be only a nickname, and like Callie would be like Mad Max is definitely from each other. Like I'm assuming like eventually Dustin like finding out like maybe right now it's like I'm assuming maybe Callie being present in that maybe Callie would be all by herself and present in that whole arcade place and maybe like Dustin totally confronting a frustrated Dustin totally confronting Callie. And basically Callie totally making fun of Dustin and basically this whole like a quarrel between like Dustin and like a frustrated Dustin and Callie happening and which numbers brings to totally eventually spiral into maybe like a kind of like a fight where like eventually maybe like it would be like the future that I was like maybe like it would be like 1 week later or like 2 days later like an actual fight that is really happening where like I'm looking maybe like Cali that way during that fight like maybe like Cali using that would be the first point where like Mike Dustin Lucas and Will would be finding out about like this girl Cali having that superpowers like 11. There's also like an individual work scenario that I'm not bringing up to also, like the name of Victoria person right now is like Will alone, like noticing something from outside of like the arcade building. So, and basically, Will carefully staring there, like I'm performing right now. I'm performing it for like Caddy right now, opening that exact door and entering. So, like the scenario that I'm performing. So, like, when being able to like, sense something would be perceptible of like Caddy having like the telekinesis kind of like superpower to certain other things and like it would be like twin but like it would be like the monster possibly like growing within will that would be able to that would be possible will to be able to like sense that something special about like Cali as like Cali would be getting would be entering like the arcade through that very door like as Cali would be like nearby to that will for that will to be able to be sense something would be precisely due to that monster within will is definitely my good friend. So this is like the scenario that I'm going to bring right now in my book Cambridge. Okay, so like the beginning of the Theory and Prediction right now is what like will right now once again seeing like the parallel world while being present in like the real world. Like I'm just for me, specifically my observations that like it would definitely be because of like that monster growing from within will is definitely my observation and definitely that with seeing like the sky with like thunder and like the thunder being like reddish kind of color like I'm just to be precisely because of like the monster growing from within will like affecting the like will's like uh visionaries and might have been might be like the reason is in my personal theory and prediction. My predictions definitely my personal inventions because like what will you be seeing right now would be exactly what like these monsters, even while they would be like traveling from like parallel world to the real world, even then like I was like what the monster will be seeing, that would be exactly what like will would be like seeing like the more the monster will be growing and will like the more will be seeing like the visions of what the monster will be seeing, but what like the monster will be seeing while it would be like looking around. That would be what like we will be seeing right now. It's definitely my concern. So like if even so like definitely my personal impression right now is that like definitely that portal within like Pranav energy laboratory even after Pranav that like that portal might have still been would be like still be that portal would still be remaining open and would be still most likely using that using that by spending all that money invested into like the experience in like Pranav energy laboratory like that energy source of this would be like still might be continued in the continued manner would be like getting supplied to like international of the laboratory to that keep that bottle open in its like to maintain and keep that bottle in its like open like state with definitely my good temperature. So definitely due to like so definitely my good temperature that especially since like the clock had basically said that basically the parallel world is like right underneath like the real world and basically like I was so back when like 11 had basically like help open like the portal within like Paranas and laboratory actually that folding might have happened. Especially my observation. The energy that like event might have amplified might have caused like the folding to happen between like the real world and like parallel world that's like underneath to get folded to the point of like the real world and parallel worlds being side by side and that might be how exactly like how Clark demonstrated that might be how that basically like the whole portal might have been got like opened within like Brunson laboratory. So like even right now in like the percent as well like that folded state between like the real world and parallel world would be still be kept maintained through like Brunson laboratory. Through the scientists in like Brunson laboratory might be like the current situation is definitely my so like right now definitely temporarily will would be like since like according to my professor temperature I'm considering like the amount of would be like growing from within will like it's only due to that reason like I'm considering like exactly like how like the amount of is like a flea like I'm considering it as well right now would be temporarily a flea until like the amount of grows amount of like growth reaches to the point where like will the monster will be taking Will's lights and basically coming out. It's definitely my impression. So like and I was definitely before that like Michael was understood like definitely like taking the life of that monster within will like figuring out like the solution and taking the life of like the monster within will is like the scenario that I was and then the maybe that maybe I'm like eventually once like Michael was understood would be like saving 11 like from like the parallel world. Maybe I'm considering maybe to be like elements like telekinesis, which like 11 would be like maybe using with that absolute precision. Maybe it would be through such a manner that the 11 would be 11 be eventually ending up being like the one to like take the life of like the who would be like taking the life of like the monster growing from the thin will using 11 like telekinesis. It's like saving the scenario that I'm looking. That way like 11 like once again saving will is like in a even scenario that I'm looking. So like right now like will like even see like the parallel world open like heavily this would be definitely like the monster power like definitely my big friend to give the monster solution from within will. So like about like the monster even while like the real world and parallel world right now would be in like a folded kind of like state like about like the monster since like the monster is like a play like even while it's in like the real world it will be like often be able to like see between both the see both the real world as like the parallel worlds. It's definitely my comprehension. While even being present in like the real world, it can be able to achieve the real world as well as the parallel world. Uh, definitely my conclusion. That would be like the current situation of Will, with like Will as well being able to like see both the real world as well as the parallel world. So like the main one of the impression is that like even though like the monster doesn't have a face, like it still would be having eyes somewhere, and like you can through those eyes like when like the monster sees like the parallel world, like basically thunder would be in like a red, looking like reddish color for like the monster. Definitely my welcome. That would be what like Will would be. That would just like the reason for like Will is not only seeing like the parallel world but also seeing like the thunder in reddish color right now. It's definitely my impression right now. So like the name of the Korea person right now is that basically like even though 1 month after like Vince like ruptured by Joe's and offer like Vince had basically seen like the whole parallel world from like the real world as well as like Vince having seen like basically even after like 1 month like Vince vomiting like parts of like the monster like even though like at that point like Vince might have definitely felt that basically definitely like something's totally wrong with Will. Even though Will might have only felt that like still, but like Will might have badly and desperately want us to like believe that they really absolutely nothing is wrong, everything's fine. So like I'm just like that absolute desire to like Will might have been in absolute denial still. Will might have been so desperate to finally have everything be right and normal in his life that I'm remember like Will might have like even since back then, like that 1 month after like Will's rescue by Hopper and Joyce, like that might have been that when Will might have for like the first time might have seen like the parallel world from like the real world, and it might have repeatedly happened multiple times even after that, leading to even the present is definitely one of the great even before like the present as well, like in multiple great number of multiple times, like it might have been occurring and it might have been occurring like the frequency of it like occurring might have increased as like time passed and reached like the present is definitely one of the revolution. So get like because of like Bill being desperate and persisting like Bill might have still been in denial until right now, but like Bill like seeing like once again seeing like the entire sky and like the outside entire sky and everything and like thundering like a orange color right now from outside the arcade building like I'm listening right now and with like Mike noticing like something off with like Bill I'm listening like right now would be like the point where like Bill would be finally letting it all how to his like front end is me revealing to like Mike with a friend of that basically something is like totally wrong. Something's totally happening with like him with like Will and basically something is like totally uh, wrong. And basically like Will revealing all this to like Mike Lucas and like Mike Lucas and Dustin like basically finding out about the thing like would be only happening right now. And that being that absolute shock and was for like initially maybe for like Lucas to like blame Will for like hiding it from them reflect the scenario that ambassador. But still, ambassador like it would be like Mike and Dustin that ambassador telling Lucas to like calm down and maybe with them like talking about what to do next and like how to like save Will and how to figure out a solution and how to like save Will. Like them like starting their next brainstorming attempt to like once again save Will. Like for that happening would be right now through this black sport incident in like the after right now. It's definitely in my opinion. So like the film of Australia production right now is that like with like Halloween day like proposing like I'm and like it was the scenario to be like it will be successfully during Halloween night that I'm looking like Mike, Lucas, Dustin as well as Callie as well. Like and I'm referring to the Callie by herself like taking a walk in like the middle of the night and then this one like she would be like the people that would be like seeing like the monster on Halloween night. And such a scenario is what I'm also premise. Them seeing like the monster and like the case of like Mike Lucas and Dustin and Will like they that would be like the first time they will be seeing like the monster after like seeing like the monster in like often go back then. Uh, but like in the case of Callie, like I'm thinking it would be like the first time that Callie would be seeing like the monster. Like the scenario that I'm so, like I'm preparing the scenario to be either two monsters or like maybe like both of them seeing like a single monster somewhere like maybe even near market or like somewhere like then totally like would be like the first people that I'm preparing will be seeing like the monster on like Halloween night. It's like the scenario that I'm looking over the end of the then for like Mike Lucas and Dustin, it would be the biggest shock because like it would be only at that point that they will be like shockingly realizing that like there are like more than a single monster that basically the monster that 11 had taken the life of like what is not the only monster that's like out there in like the battle world. Like Mike will end up like of India realizing that like the scenario that I'm looking at the impression and like this whole situation with like the monster will be eventually bringing Scally, even though Scally is like cap like totally green and totally different from like the character of like Mike Jefferson. Still like I'm between the whole situation with like the monster eventually bringing Cali closer to Mike Lucas and Dustin. And he will was like the scenario that I'm looking at. But for me, the top Cali has like telekinesis powers like I'm looking like still Cali's telekinesis Cali won't be able to like control her won't be having that absolute precision over her telekinesis power that like 11 had. It's definitely one of the impression. So like secretly because of this reason I'm something like even though like the whole mental scenario that I'm looking is for like the whole monster situation eventually bringing Cali close to like Mike Lucas and Dustin and Will, but like I'm still even then like I'm like Mike Lucas and Dustin like even though they will be that way, eventually realizing that like Cali has like telekinesis power still, and even though like Mike Lucas and Dustin would think that basically put your remember back to like the point where like Eleven had basically used the telekinesis power to like really take the lives of like that monster back in like pocket hole back then that still have like Mike Lucas and Dustin won't be willing to like take the risk and have Scally like use some telekinesis power to basically destroy like the most of weapon will and trade will like Amazon because of Cali most likely Amazon not having that absolute control over her telekinesis power that 11 has. Like Amazon like Mike Lucas and Dustin like eventually deciding not to take that risk and like to that and not take that risk and to the risk like will flying but due to like Cali's like telekinesis power going wrong. So like Amazon like there will be that fear. There will be that fear within like microaggression industry. While maybe Bill would be telling them that like that to let Kenny use her power and destroy that monster because like it will be poor Bill that will be like going through all the suffering from the environment and all that. But like I'm still microaggression industry like totally like trying to somehow like struggling to the convince Bill and not allowing Will to like seek the help of Kelly and basically that way eventually I'm the bond of friendship eventually to keep on between Cali and like Michael the of Sinanville and Abel they're all with some sort of maybe together would be like eventually entering like into like the parallel world to basically find and save elements is like also like an eventual scenario that I'm delivering another operation. Maybe like I'm possible like Cali would be like the magical sword like that like the prince of that person in the game like the arcade game had used to like basically was trying to get hold of to like basically to destroy like the dragon like basically that magical sword to like basically save Dolphin like which would be 11 like I was like it would be like because maybe seeing Cali being like would be like the foreshadowing the magical sword like the foreshadowing the magic sword would be maybe foreshadowing Cali and Cali's superpower definitely going to potential. This should be like maybe eventually playing a role in like maybe like eventually destroying like the monster from like that monster layer in like the parallel world in their attempt to like save 11 and through 11 to like save will as well once again. It's like an also like an eventual focus scenario that I'm also bringing up the emotion. So it's like the flavor of the emotion right now, but like this guy, like basically trying to like the trailer trying to like convince Hopper about like the thing that 11 had said like about like 11's like superpowers and like 11 being like the weapon and all that like basically and Popper straight away putting on that absolute fake act and basically as if like he knows nothing about it. But like I'm just saying right now, Popper getting like the biggest surprise and like the biggest shock is like the scenario that I'm getting. One like I'm just like eventually this like whole interaction eventually ending with like that person like telling Popper about like the recent bank robbery where like just one girl had basically of the where like one among like the robbers had basically while being chased by like the cop like one among the robbers like basically like basically like use use like telekinesis or like use some sort of like a mysterious power to like break down like the entrance of like the tunnel and that way like the robbers escape like from like the cops like basically he's making this reveal right now with the to offer like the scenario that I'm saying that thoroughly shocking pop like the scenario that I'm looking and only at that point I'm looking like Hopper possibly singing along the lines that to like basically Jane's name like runner naming Jane 11 like basically the actual meaning behind it, like along such lines, like Hopper starting to think that basically, so like 11, that like Hopper maybe think along the lines that basically there will be other um, other people as well that might have other than like Jane and Terry as like there will be others as well that might have went through like the experiments of like runner and might have so like basically so like the names 11 would be possibly be due to like actually the 11th experiment of runner finally becoming a success through James and hence like James named the 11. Like basically so like the previous names like from of that runner previous experiments might have been like experiments like 1 to 10 and like the experiment 1 to 10 would be out there with their superpowers and everything. So like this single person, this person like among like the group of robbers like who had used like these superpowers to like basically his escape might have been one among those numbers from 1 to 10. Like basically like of we are having such a realization is like the scenario that I'm noticing right now. And my personal impression. So like my personal impression that like right now through this like guy like trying to desperately convince Hopper about like this whole things that Eleven did like basically this interaction eventually ending up with like Hopper shocked me finding out about like Callie and I was thinking like Hopper's like next move I was trying would be his actual search or like his hunch to like basically find Callie. This is even the my personal impression because like I was doing Hopper is always hearing like the positive like Cali on top of that through that whole interaction that probably realizing that basically Cali is like totally using her unlike in Eleven's case like Cali totally using her superpowers for like all the wrong reasons and basically Hopper would be that way would be feeling as like she definitely wants to like basically capture Cali as soon as possible and basically that we would want to like capture Cali as soon as possible and basically to ensure that like Cali doesn't fall into like an even bigger wrong hands and basically even powerful forces like using Cali as like a weapon for like even way more like serious like offensive and things like basically like Hopper sharing such a possibility and basically Hopper basically deciding to like start with Hopper that is like starting with like active search for like Cali to find Cali like the scenario that I'm also bringing. I'm also bringing maybe I'm also bringing like maybe like Hopper even uh, also maybe like thinking along the lines as it's like the possibility of like Cali like maybe from like the whole description of like the bank robbery and everything that person I'm also right now would be telling Hopper and also bringing like Hopper maybe even thinking along the lines of like the possibility of like maybe 11 having like a change of character eventually. Maybe 11 having survived back then and like something might have resulted in like 11 having like a change in 11's like character. Maybe spending time in like the parallel world might have caused like 11 to like have a change in like 11's character. Maybe along the lines like other things like because like definitely like 11 Hopper might have talked to like Mike Lewis and Dustin after like 11 had disappeared right in front of them back in like Hawkins Middle School, and it was like Mike Lucas and Dustin might have been like told Hopper that like Eleven died like taking the life of like that monster, and Hopper as well like definitely by placing that waffle on to like that box in like a box, and that box would be the box, and that would be like Hopper's way of like basically like of like in a symbolical manner like basically uh of like placing flowers on the grave of someone like basically it would be like kind of like in a symbolic manner like Hopper might have done that by placing that waffle which like Hopper might have felt that like felt that Eleven might have loved waffles a lot because of like Eleven stealing waffle from like that shop like Hopper might have thought and for me maybe Hopper even connecting that to like the positive like Eleven maybe viewed in such manner like Eleven might have eventually ended up being like Eleven might have survived during that whole incident and maybe like that incident like in that Hogan school might have resulted in like while 11 taking out the monster 11 might have ended up in like the battle bot and then 11 might have came back from like the battle bot to like the real world and 11 might have then might have that his Robert might have taken like possibly made 11 part of their team and that way like 11 character might have eventually changed and then like 11 right now would be alive and basically it might be like 11 that will be like basically was like part of like the group of robbers who basically used that power to like basically like to destroy part of like the tunnel to like and escape from like the police like basically that um person among the robbers that used that mysterious powers like possibly being 11 also along such lines like I'm referring like Copper even thing is also like about that I'm referring and that way like Copper made the thing that like 11 is alive and the 11 will be part of like that group of robbers that had escaped back then and that way, like Hopper also starting his work for like events in such a manner, so also like about the development for him. Okay, so like definitely my very ambition right now. I've got this new guy to like talking to like I'm over like him to totally fought for Nancy like the scenario that I'm explaining him. Repeatedly and repeatedly trying to like win Nancy over like the scenario that I'm looking and that way like Steve and Tim that new guy will be having like a fight between them. It's like the possible scenario that I'm looking and the in the case of Carol like I'm looking like Carol and the super definitely dumping Tommy and basically would be super like maybe trying to like cheat on Tommy with like the news guy. So also like an eventual possible scenario that I'm looking for. Okay, so like definitely now with 300% right now as far as this newspaper clipping of will like basically with like the zombie return on it so like insert will placed on like with some locker in like Hawkins school like and like that would see definitely the work of like Freud is definitely one of the potential. So like Freud still would be totally having that absolute grudge on like Mike Lucas Justin as well as Will as well. It's definitely my contrary emphasis. Even right now, to the present as well, like Troy might have now definitely not let go of Black Pirates and not just Troy but like his friend as well. It'll be like both of them would be still having their grudge on like Mike Lucas and as well as Will right now. It's also definitely my favorite. So like definitely my favorite since like that new guy in like Hogan's School, like definitely trying to like win Nancy over like repeatedly and like Nancy even after like Nancy will be like straight away telling him no and like would be rejecting him. Like and that whole situation resulting in like Steve and him, the new guy having a fight. And definitely I'm looking like maybe that new guy like totally offering Steve and basically maybe at that point would be when I'm basically like Tommy would be showing up and Tommy would be like attacking the new guy and basically that way like Steve as well as Tommy like basically taking the offering like the new guy is like and teaching like the new guy maybe a lesson. It's also like a scenario that I'm looking again like the situation and I'm also like even in like the present like I'm looking like Tommy as well as like Steve and that their whole quarrel in like the past might have still not been resolved and still that whole like there will be like there won't be that friendship between like Steve and Tommy even to the present certainly with Renson. But like I'm looking like what will be eventually I'm looking for like that friendship to eventually be restored between like Steve and Tommy and the precise catalyst or like the precise reasons that will be like possible that will happen will be precisely this new guy in looking for like that eventually Carol even definitely my speaking to my birthday impression for like Carol eventually like cheating on Tommy with like the new guy. So like that eventually resulting in like an enraged Tommy like basically searching for like the new guy. And basically like as like when Tommy would be finding like the new guy, like the new guy would have totally offered Steve and like the whole fight between the new guy, Steve and the new guy will be taking place and the new guy would be only offering Steve. But like at that point would be when I was perfect when Tommy would be like in such a manner like Tommy will be like showing up to that location with the clear intent to like fight like the new guy. And basically that way like Steve as well as Tommy like attacking like the new guy together and basically like them offering like the new guy and maybe like taking the new guy and like maybe like an eventual scenario that I'm looking for again to record. And that way I'm going to bring like the friendship between Tommy and Steve being getting up the store and at that point I'm going to bring Tommy totally telling Steve about like how Steve was right and basically that Tommy was wrong like about that final dialogue that basically Steve had told Tommy before like Steve had basically like the past left Tommy and Carol like basically that dialogue that Steve had said back then like was totally right like basically Tommy saying that to Steve at that point and basically like that way like the friendship between Tommy and Steve getting explored and straight away it's like Tommy breaking up with like Carol as well like the initial scenario that about the breaking up with okay, so like, but name of my Korean question right now is that like Maxine would be definitely like the new guy sister, and I was like the new guy would be definitely ending up in like the very same class, exact same class as like Nancy. and Steve. It's definitely the scenario that I'm looking for. And definitely from like the name Maxine, like Max, like definitely like definitely with like Dustin's like they've already been upset with like just hearing like the name Maxine, the Maxine like possible definitely like Dustin like straight away to totally be not all nice towards like Maxine with like the scenario that I'm observing. But it's again the hand like Dustin straight away like assuming that like no matter like how much like Maxine will be telling like Dustin, and I'm personally putting like Maxine as well, not being, I'm personally like typically the scenario to be like Dustin straight away assuming that Maxine would be like Mad Max. I think that's that name of that player in like the arcade game that has basically a past Dustin. Like basically Dustin, I'm personally like totally assuming that like Maxine is that Max, but like I'm personally that Mad Max would definitely be Cali. It's definitely my personal impression. So Dustin straight away assuming and like that way picking a fight with like Maxine and like Maxine won't be like giving an inch either like and Maxine as well will be fighting back against like Dustin is like this little scenario that I'm building and that whole like quarrel and everything I'm going to eventually I'm like eventually in like the future I'm resulting in like an absolute bond of like maybe affection forming between like Dustin and Maxine. It's like also like an individual scenario that I'm considering. Maybe like that force fight I'm considering to the setting in like basically the point where like the Dustin would be like finally convinced that like Maxine was innocent. Is in fact innocent and like it was all Dustin assumption like I'm considering maybe from that point on like Dustin feeling maybe sorry towards like Maxie and like Maxine and like Dustin maybe like feeling guilty down and maybe for that eventually resulting in like Dustin maybe like eventually falling in love with like Maxine. So also like in the scenario that I'm considering I'm a version. Okay, so like definitely like the Korean production right now as for like the pick your own pumpkin, like the entirety of like the great quantity of like number of like pumpkins in that farm, like entirety of those pumpkins being like eaten, like I'm thinking that that will be definitely big what Bill's doing is definitely was renovation, but like Bill won't be even aware about it, especially when he gets the precise more stuff from within will that it's like himself like the start to like grow like I'm whispering like that might be causing like wind in like the middle of the night like I'm whispering like right now as like right now like the monster would have grown and reached to a certain stage where like I'm whispering like the monster might have started to like control wind like in like the middle of the night it's definitely one of them. And that way like it could be like the monster like in the middle of the night like will be like might be like not like unconscious like will be like waking up from this like being controlled by like the monster within him and basically the monster will be like that way like Will won't be like at that point the middle of the night Will might not be conscious at all and Will would be like acting like a monster and basically Will would be like but like it would be like very same Will but like Will won't be conscious but like and would be like behaving like a monster it's like the scenario that I'm doing and it might be precisely that will controlled by like the monster within will like that might have eaten all those functions in like that farm. It's definitely one of those mentioned because like the monster still since it will be within will like understand like maybe the monster might not be able to like since like the monster has not came out like it won't be able to like hunt while then so like understand like separately only due to the reason number seven like it might have like control when in like it might be controlling with maybe in like the and so from this point on like it might have been like it might have grown up to the point of like starting to like control the each and every single night and basically I'm looking like the scenario to be like not just with like huge pumpkin farm alone but like I'm looking like from like the take up ahead like I'm looking more and more pumpkin farms as well as other vegetables in like other farms as well like like getting like eaten and like the culprit won't Hopper would be like desperately trying to like find like the culprit but like not even Hopper not even Jim would be or even Mike Lucas and like none of them would be aware or like realizing that it's like the culprit is exactly Will definitely my company, not even being aware of it, and I'm just them all figuring it out only in lectures and theater of lecture, scenarios that I'm considering I'm very ambitious. Also, definitely my consider impression as for like even the scenarios that I'm considering is for like once it would be like Halloween night, like both that night, like I'm considering like a lot of like the people would be in like pumpkin costumes, like Halloween pumpkin costumes, like the scenario that I'm considering. So like I'm considering like it would be in like the middle of the night that like I'm considering like the monster within will would be like getting more and more active with the healing and the payment. So like I'm like maybe it might even have to do with like the whole 8 o'clock thing and like maybe like the energy spiking within like the energy level which end of the brain might be present precisely around like 8 o'clock. That as well is also like a possibility, and that might even have like an effect to the throughout like the surrounding areas of like the town Falcon, both in like the real world and like the battle world, where like the monsters would get like for like the monsters present in like the surrounding area of like the town of Falcon, the direction like the real world or like the battle world around like 8 o'clock. During that time, like I'm just like like that energy spike which might exist within like Varanasi, which like might have an effect on the monster. So like I'm looking like just like Halloween night, like there have to be like a Halloween night like party or something. Uh, Especially around like 8 o'clock. Just like during the scenarios that I'm remembering. So like during that I'm remembering like during that whole Halloween night party, like I'm remembering like will totally the monster within will like take control. The monster within will would be like totally like would be having access to like the things that will would be seeing like will visions and so like so I'm remembering that party like a lot of like a lot of like people will be having like the pumpkin costumes and those different like uh, definitely, boyfriend like even like Joyce's new boyfriend, boyfriend like as well would be like him as well would be like probably like Joyce would be getting him like a pumpkin box in like that green one and everything. So like boyfriend like him as well probably be attacked by Will. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. During that Halloween party, like Will probably losing control. That must have taken control of Will and like Will totally all of a sudden like acting in like an extremely scary manner and like Will totally attacking like that new boyfriend of like Joyce, as well as like Amazon Mike Titus Anderson and also will be present there in like that Halloween party, which Amazon most likely right now, the like the Halloween party would be most likely maybe at Will's home. There's also like a possibility that I'm bring. So like like it being like a beginner party that like Amazon like a lot of people might be present. So like they are like Will Amazon maybe like losing control. And basically like this whole thing that like paper left in like Will locker about like the boy who returned back like will like being infected by like the insect the newspaper which like return as like zombie like that and possibly maybe would be like a foreshadowing to like this incident during like Halloween night which I'm also right now but I think might be happening where like Will would be totally kind of like acting like not just a zombie but like a fast zombie like a fast and extremely aggressive zombie like with acting out in like such an uncontrollable manner and with possibly like first itself like and like will be attacking like the boyfriend of like Joyce, it's like the scenario that I'm looking at, and that would be like such an extreme shock for like Mike Nicholson and like the people present in that whole party, like the scenario that I'm looking at. So I'm considering, and I'm considering maybe it might. I'm considering also like of like the possibility of like maybe it not being like a field party, either like I'm considering maybe it being like a party where like there will be only like maybe Jonathan, Nancy, and Joyce and her boyfriend and like Mike Lucas and Dustin and Will might be like also like and because of that that's going to be also like a possibility like maybe them alone being like the only people present in that Halloween party. It's also like a possibility that and or like the other possibility is like even more people being present in that Halloween party where like Will would be like totally losing control and attacking like all the people in their when they're like trying to attack all the people there present there like the party with like the pumpkin costume. It's like the little scenario that I'm little bring and okay, so like the cinema ambition right now was like right now revealing that like that huge number of like pumpkins in that fierce pumpkin field that's being like each of them being like poison like and like so the player versus actually face the monsters will be having like poison within the player of the ambition. So like those poisons will be extremely maybe even deadly strong poison. So also like the player of the ambition. So this would be the best reason for right now like seeing like food for right now like saying like the pumpkins having been poisoned with definitely members of the it might have been only just like a will that might have been in like the middle of the night being controlled by like the monster within will like basically eating all that pumpkin but like I'm talking by like the will might have been controlled by like the monster like I'm talking like even through which teeth like and like there will be like poison. So like that may be how that something might have all been that gotten poisoned definitely might also remember. So and like might also remember. So like I'm maybe for like a scenario where like I'm like during Halloween night like I'm like Joyce's like new boyfriend like I'm possibly maybe even dying by the hands of like Will. Like also like a possibility that I'm also like Joyce's new boyfriend like most likely having like a pumpkin outfit during Halloween night, and I'm looking like that totally that seeing that totally in like the middle of the night, like seeing that towards me, boy something like the pumpkin or outfit like totally triggering like the like monster senses from triggering that the monster from within will and causing will to like basically with will like at that point like the poisons coming from like covering like will teeth and maybe like will acting in an uncontrollable manner and will possibly maybe like attacking that new boyfriend of yours and boyfriend like this like that way like the new boyfriend of like Joyce having like 5 marks and then like the poison maybe being like so extremely deadly that like him maybe like dying on the spot. So like Joyce's new boyfriend that way like maybe even dying on the spot. So also like a possibility that and that's like the more likely possibility that and the least likely possibility that and is like for like for that from Bill on like George boyfriend like seriously like resulting in like George's like new boyfriend like basically falling into like getting poisoned and like seriously badly it's like health coming down at that point. It's also like a possible scenario that I'm looking at that is quickly like I was like Johnson rushing him to like the hospital and basically like the doctor maybe at that point telling him that basically uh, and at that point, like maybe like the doctor telling Joyce and Johnson that basically that like solely due to that them suddenly like Joyce's new boyfriend like right on time like he was able to like survive that like if it were like one or two like if it were like a few minutes later then he would have died like due to like the extreme deadly poison maybe along those lines like the doctor at that point telling to like an extremely shocked Joyce and Jonathan uh, at that point it's like turning into a scenario that I'm looking on the bring and not the bring. Okay, so like definitely of the 300% right now as for like Chennai is that like from like the very next field that like proper right now hearing as like it's like affecting like the poison pumpkin and like on the other field like I'm looking like that noise would be that of like most likely that person who that was like they are in like the body station would like that's why they're trying to like convince Hopper about like 11 like about understand like it will be him that he might have only followed Hopper and might have came to like this field and he might be like stealthily hiding in like the field right next to it where like and he might be stealthily from there might be like stealthily like stealthily taking photos or like stealthily recording video of like all this like great number of like poison pumpkin. It's definitely my thing very much. So like right now, the super liquid like Hopper like moving towards that field right next after like hearing like some noise from there like I'm like Hopper right now in that field right next to it like finding that precise person like hiding in that field with the camera. It's like the scenario that I'm remember. Okay, so like the impression right now is that like even though Nancy right now so badly wants like Jonathan to like meet someone in like Halloween night and to be for Jonathan to be in like a relationship like but still since like Steve even right now has like maintained his like change in like field care friends into like the side of good and since like Steve even to the present still a nice guy like I'm the that definitely like the with the scenario that I'm considering right now is definitely for like John, but definitely I'm referring won't be like meeting anyone new or like even falling in love with anybody else like and I'm referring like so like this is, because of all this reason I'm switching around referring like the eventual scenario so definitely it will be through these eventual death that I'm also trying to be like a sacrifice from Steve's side to like has he will be trying to like protect Nancy and also bring like from like the monster and also bring like Steve ending up dying as a monster while trying to like protect Nancy. Like during the scenario that I'm considering and that possibly in such a scenario what I'm considering would be how like Nancy would be like eventually ending up being alone and I'm considering like the whole monster situation and everything once again like showing up back into like Nancy's life and that all those problems and everything are turned back into like Nancy's life eventually. And that at that point, like Nancy would be like feeling all alone, and that at that point, like Ambassador Johnson would be like once again would be becoming that protection for Nancy, and Ambassador like that whole situation, dangerous situation, eventually bringing once again bringing like Nancy and Jonathan close uh, to each other, and Ambassador that would be like eventually ending up into like a relationship forming between like Nancy and Jonathan. That would be how like eventually Nancy and Jonathan will be ending up in like a relationship. It's like the scenario that I'm just putting him on the pre-production right now. Okay, so like definitely on the pre-production right now with like Mike Lucas and Dustin and will like continue the stalking of Maxine things is like Mad Max. Like I'm just certain to my impression that like Mad Max would certainly be Cali and not Maxine. Definitely on the print. But like I'm just like this whole stalking about the secondly, Maxine would have definitely noticed like even though Maxine would have definitely noticed like this consistent stalking by these four classmates like Mike Lucas and Dustin and Bill. And like understanding Maxine would be still putting on a fake act while skateboarding. Like Maxine would be right now putting on like the fake acting as if like she hasn't noticed the little consent. Definitely I'm different like while Mike Lucas and Dustin as well as like Bill would be like continuing their stalking like ambassador like eventually like them totally unexpectedly being confronted by Maxine, like the scenario that I was saying, like when they were trying to like looking for Maxine, like I was doing all of them, like Maxine showing up from behind them and like confronting them and calling them out on them, talking like the scenarios that I was saying. And at that point, I was just hoping like definitely like them revealing us to like how like they feel that she is like Mad Max and basically her straight away like telling them in and different her to tell them in like a road manner as well as the president. The reason would be like Amazon like Maxine would be like totally like with like Maxine always having that kind of like a gloomy like kind of like a facial expression at all times like Amazon like would be most likely due to like most likely Maxine as well as the new guy like her brother like their parents might have totally moved to like the town of Hawkins recently and Maxine might have only lost her friends, like saying that the previous school that she might have been in, that she might have had like a lot of like great friends. So like it might be due to that, and Maxine might have only clear to her parents to like not change her school, but like I was looking like her parents might have had like there maybe some sort of reason for them to like move to like town of Hawkins. So like I'm wondering that may be the reason for like Maxine having that kind of like an irritated face like at all times right now, which means like showing up to like the class of like Mike Nichols and Dustin. And then it's definitely my first reaction. So definitely because of the situation I'm personally want like Maxine will be confronting Mike Nichols and Dustin and well about like just talking of her like I'm looking like her to only talk to them in her own manner and her even eventually will be telling them that basically like once they will be telling her that like as like why they were stalking her like I'm doing her to even tell to them in her own manner that she's not mad much. But still I'm also thinking like Dustin like and Lucas and something definitely would be like definitely certain that basically that and I was like most likely Dustin and Lucas that only thinking along the lines of that she might be someone who might not like the attention of that basically like who might want to just want the spot of that top spot in like the arcade game while not attracting any attention user like she might not be like a fan of like being popular but like and I was wondering like my Lucas and something like saying along such lines and really still Lucas and Dustin like being strongly confident that like singing is still assuming that basically that she that Maxine is definitely Mad Max like the scenario that I'm referring and then that way like I'm referring like definitely Lucas as well as and I'm referring that like I'm referring maybe like with as well as Mike might and stop therefore stopping of like uh Maxine but like I'm referring like definitely Lucas as well as Justin like still continuing on like and keeping up their talking of like and Maxine like saying the scenario that I was referring and definitely, according to my impression, I'm considering like eventually for like the scenario to for the future scenario to be like Maxine like that for sadness of losing her precious friends from like such previous for this might have been like the case and like the reason for like Maxine looking like uh not having the joy in her face like so like I'm like that whole sadness of Maxine eventually uh getting overcome through uh, her friendship that would be eventually like the future would be formed with like microbes and Dustin as well as Will stepping into the well, like eventually once like microbes and Dustin and Will would be like entering like the parallel world uh, again to like and I'm looking at that point to be with the intent to like basically like save 11 because like by then like them having getting some sort of a flow as to like 11 still being alive and basically on top of that like to save will as well like for these two roads like these two roads like they would be like entering into the parallel world and by then like at that point I'm also like maybe Maxine might be like finding that Microsoft understanding all of the exchanges of reasons for like them always talking about that like understanding like she might start to like basically stop Microsoft understanding to see like what they are up to and maybe like through such a manner like her shortly finding out like basically once like Microsoft understanding and when would be like entering into like the parallel world like her also like basically stop secretly following them and seeing that and her as well that way entering into like the parallel world without realizing what the problem is, like her as well entering into the parallel world and that way like basically her as Maxine as well ending up in like the adventure of like Microsoft and of and will it's like in like the parallel world it's also like an individual person scenario that I'm bringing up my social. Okay, so like the three impressions right now with like Maxine right now throwing like a piece of paper or something like into like the waste basket and basically might lose the end up in and feel like basically rushing into like see what it is like I'm considering that would be most likely a message intended for like specifically might lose the end up in and will so like basically to stop their talking with certainly not the so like that I'm considering like to be like out there unexpected for them and I was like them at that point totally feeling silly at that point. It's also like a scenario that I'm looking for. Okay, so like nothing of the three impression right now with like Joe's like picking Will up from school like early like I'm personally like this might have been like going on for like a while now ever since like Will might have first seen that like part of like the most of why Will had like when it back then is a month later after like Will after like Will was rescued by Joyce and Hopper like basically when Will had vomited and basically had seen like the part of like the monster and basically right then when and right then might have been like also like the first time that like Will might have also seen like the parallel world from like the real world as well for the first time was the on the press. So like Will might have totally seen people here and Will might have talked about this and revealed about this only to his mother alone, Stephanie my own friends, and not even to like Jonathan and Will might have revealed about this. Will might have told about this only to like his mother alone, Stephanie my own friends, and like definitely Joy might be like hiding that from like Jonathan and everyone to not worry the so like a person might be like a secret between just like Joy and Will alone, Stephanie my own friends, and Joyce might have been like desperately working hard and making all that money to like give will all that like necessary treatment. But like I'm going to bring that so this treatment like right now with like Joyce right now taking will picking up Will early from school like I'm going to like it might have been for like the checkup at like the hospital and everything is definitely for the treatment in like the hospital and everything is definitely so like since that day like Will might have been so scared and told his like mother Joyce about this and since then I'm also bring like Joyce and Will might have every single day from school that Will might be that getting picked up early by Joyce and basically that Will might be like going to like the hospital every single day for this treatment. So like that way Will might be leaving school every single day early. So definitely on the that way like this whole this whole nickname zombie like for Will might have been formed might have been created between like the kids at school like they might have like that way like the kids might have started to between them might have been between themselves they might have been started to talk about Will as like zombie and everything that might have been and then even insulting it Will by like placing that piece of paper with like the zombie or on it like basically all that happening will be perfectly through the flag they picking up by Joyce of Will from school to see the law. It's definitely my brain version. So like it might the pickup might have been going on for like a while. It's also like new member friends. So like I'm particularly like but will being extremely disturbed with like the other kids at school like reading will indifferently like I'm different like definitely will right now I'm like Joyce to like take will to like the hospital for like usual treatment and everything. And at that point, I'm looking like on the way, like I'm most likely I'm looking like for will to like only tell Joyce that basically will feeling extremely disturbed and will telling Joyce that basically to not come pick Will up from school anymore. That like when would be just telling his mother that like he's fine, he's totally fine. That like she should stop coming and basically thinking in from school would be around the lines of something like when you will be like telling Joyce and I'm also make sure would be definitely extremely worried for Will and I'm also like Joyce totally trying to like trying to like basically talk to Will and trying to like get Will to like agree with to Joyce to like basically to keep continuing like the treatment and everything. But like I was just like Will totally in like stubborn manner like I was like because like only due to like Will being extremely disturbed with like and sad about like the indifferent critics by like the other like tears at the school that I'm like Will would be most likely test in the stubborn manner would be telling his mother that like he refuses to like get any treatment is like the scenario that I'm putting and the other maybe that ending up with like increasing like the pace of like the growth of like the monster from the scale is definitely my brother. So like the side effects of that growth of the monster like basically like the pace of it as well like increasing is like the also like the scenario that I'm putting and I'm impression. So also, like even as a correct questions are really just like elements like name that was like that is from elements that was like 011 and basically in the case of the carry it's like 008. So like I'm looking at the Pranav himself might even Pranav might have even began this like experiment of that making a human weapon that can basically like use like telekinesis as well as like telepathic powers. Like basically when Pranav might have even had the started off the experiment itself, like one might have started off by typing like 001, but like the first experiment of it is definitely one of the brain version. Though Pranav himself might have totally felt because it's like three digits like I'm the different like Pranav himself might have totally felt that experiment as like having such extreme difficulty in that for even for Pranav to get back that experience to eventually be a success. So like Pranav himself might have felt that basically the possibility of like the just like experiments like taking of like the possibility of like multiple subjects ending up being like a failure. It's possibly taking like hundreds and hundreds of subjects ending up being a failure for Pranav to eventually get that final subject that will be ending up succeeding in like Pranav's experiment is definitely my observation. That might have been definitely what Pranav himself might have felt strongly felt when he might have even began to like experiment with like the very first test subject itself. It's definitely my observation. That will be the reason for like even the tattoo of like 11 have it as well as like Cali having three digits, with, like Cali's being like 008 as well as like 11's being like 011. It's definitely my comprehension. Okay, so like definitely not the comprehension right now is that basically like then would might definitely be secretly having a crush on Mike. It's definitely one of the things. Whereas like Mike having a crush on 11 and like I'm was like Dustin was eventually developing a crush towards that Maxine just like the scenario that I'm while Lucas and was like eventually was like the whole like in like Microsoft and Dustin's like adventures like and Will's adventure like depending literally I'm preferring like not only Maxine but also Gary as well ending up being part of that adventure like the scenario that I'm looking and at that point I'm looking like eventually Lucas shortly finding Cali seriously cool and I'm looking like Lucas eventually developing a crush towards Cali so it's like eventual scenario where I'm looking another brain version. So definitely not the understand that I'm sitting on this that like even though right now like we can only see like the parallel world from like the real world. And the different like and that definitely won't be hallucination, but like that will be actually like the modes of that we don't within will like given grant temporarily granting with that powers of like uh the monster to be able to just see like the parallel world from like the real world as well. Definitely what might be happening right now with will is definitely one trend to that. And the different like definitely, like eventually I'm considering that way that I'm at a point like still in my person that like without my creative I'm considering like this whole with like with like classmates like basically with like the kids at school, like basically having given like with like the name zombie and all that, like ambassador that only affecting will to the point where like eventually will ambassador like getting seriously angry with like Mother Joyce and like will be adamant that like we won't go to the hospital and get any more treatment. It's like the into scenario that ambassador that way like eventually like the treatment of will ending up being interrupted and stopped that in such a manner like scenario that ambassador and that stopping like the growth of like the monster to get accelerated. The speed of growth of like the monster to get accelerated is like the scenario that ambassador and that way like ambassador like eventually will gaining like the power to like open the portal from like the real world to like the parallel world is like the scenario that I'm describing. So exactly like the how like the monster have like the power to like create the portal and move from like the real world to like the parallel world and with like that monster growing more and more with like will like eventually will get gaining such a power and then but the next time might look send us in and will be like traveling from like the real world to like the parallel world like it will be at that point it will definitely be will that Amazon would be like the one who would be like creating portal on his own and basically it will be through will that Amazon creating like the portal that Amazon like might look and will be like moving from like the real world to like the parallel world. It's like the scenario. The next time is like the scenario that Amazon bring Amazon.